Commander Veltaris stood in the command center of Velthar Prime, watching the screens with his 4 arms crossed tight against his chest. The situation was bad. Worse than bad. The Crythian swarm had been attacking for 3 weeks without stopping, and his forces were breaking. The station shook again as another enemy ship crashed against the outer shields. Red lights flashed across every panel. Alarms screamed their endless warnings. Veltaris had learned to ignore them days ago. Shield strength at 22%, Hixral reported from his station. The crystalline officer's body flickered with stress patterns that Veltaris had never seen before. If they maintain this assault rate, we have perhaps 6 hours before complete failure. 6 hours. Veltaris looked at the tactical display. Thousands of Crythian bioships swarmed around the station like insects around dying prey. That's what we are, he thought. Dying prey. What about the civilians? Veltaris asked. Station Administrator Pelnoth shuffled forward on her 6 legs. Her voice was tired. The last transport left 2 hours ago. We kept only essential personnel. 400 souls remain on this station, Commander. All of them are soldiers or support staff who refuse to leave. 400 against 1,000,000. The numbers were impossible. The Crythians didn't care about losses. They bred faster than any species in the galaxy could kill them. They existed only to consume and expand. And right now, they wanted Velthar Prime. The station was important. It guarded the jump point to 3 heavily populated systems. If it fell, millions would die in the invasion that followed. The Galactic Coalition had ordered them to hold at any cost. Veltaris was trying. Stars above. He was trying. Commander, incoming transmission from Coalition Command, Hixral said. Finally. Veltaris straightened. Put it through. The face of Admiral Quexlon appeared on the main screen. The elderly Voxian looked even more tired than Veltaris felt. Commander Veltaris. I've reviewed your situation, the Admiral said without greeting. I'm sorry. Every available fleet is engaged. The Crythians have launched simultaneous attacks across 17 sectors. We're stretched beyond our limits. Veltaris felt something cold settle in his chest. So we're alone. Not entirely. Quexlon's face shifted in what might have been discomfort. There is 1 unit available. They're unconventional. A new member species volunteered forces when they heard about the crisis. Hope sparked despite everything. How many ships? What class? 1 transport. 40 soldiers. The hope died. Veltaris stared at the screen. Admiral. With respect, 40 soldiers won't change anything. We face 1,000,000 enemies. I know the numbers, Commander. Quexlon's voice was sharp. Then, he softened. But these aren't ordinary soldiers. They're from a world recently contacted. A class 1, 2, Deathworld. The command center went quiet. Even the alarms seemed to fade. Class 1-2 was the highest danger rating. Worlds where everything evolved to kill everything else. Worlds where survival required something beyond normal life. What species? Veltaris asked. They call themselves humans. From a planet called Earth. Quexlon paused. Commander, I won't lie to you. We know almost nothing about them. First contact was only 8 months ago. They've been in our database for less time than that. But their planet tried to kill them for millions of years. It failed. Veltaris considered this. What choice did he have? When will they arrive? 48 hours. Can you hold that long? Veltaris looked at his shields, at his exhausted crew, at the endless swarm of enemies. We'll hold, Admiral. We have no other choice. Good luck, Commander. May the stars watch over you. The transmission ended. Hixral turned from his station. Sir, shall I pull up the file on these humans? Yes. Show me what we're getting. The crystalline officer worked his controls. A display appeared, but it was sparse. Limited information. Images of bipedal creatures, with only 2 arms, 2 legs, no natural armor or weapons. They looked soft, fragile even. Then Veltaris saw the planet data. Earth. Gravity, 20% higher than standard. Atmosphere composition. That would be toxic to most oxygen-sensitive species. Extreme temperature variations. Tectonic instability. Massive storms. Dominant predator species. The file had a warning flag. Red text that made his blood run cold. Extreme caution advised. Quarantine protocols under review. Species classification. Pending full evaluation. What does that mean? Pelnoth asked, reading over his shoulder. It means the Coalition doesn't know what to make of them yet, Veltaris said quietly. It means we're desperate enough to accept help from beings we don't understand. The station shook violently. Something had breached the outer hull in Sector 7. Alarms changed pitch, becoming more urgent. Crithian boarding parties, HFY reported. 300 contacts. Sectors 7, 9, and 12. Veltaris moved to tactical. Route all available forces. Hold them at the secondary bulkheads. Do not let them reach the core systems. The battle resumed. It always resumed. The Crithians never stopped. Never tired. Never hesitated. They came in waves. And each wave cost lives. Over the next 2 days, Veltaris watched his forces dwindle. They held the boarding parties. They repaired the breaches. They fought with everything they had. But every hour, they grew weaker. The humans were their only hope now. Veltaris found himself checking the sensors constantly, watching for their ship. 48 hours passed like 48 years. Contact, HFY announced. Human vessel entering scanner range. It's small. 7. Veltaris watched the dot on his screen. Small was an understatement. The ship was barely larger than a supply courier. How could 40 soldiers make any difference? But they were here. That was something. Hail them, Veltaris ordered. Direct them to Docking Bay 3, and prepare a security detail. Sir, the Crithians are massing for another assault, Pelnoth warned. Sensors indicate a major push within the hour. Of course they were. The swarm could sense weakness like predators sensed blood. Then our timing is fortunate, Veltaris said, though he didn't feel fortunate. He felt desperate. Perhaps these Deathworlders will prove useful. He had no idea how right he was. The human ship docked smoothly. Veltaris made his way to the bay with a small escort. His hands rested on his sidearms, just in case. Unknown species from a quarantined world. Who knew what they might do? The airlock cycled. Veltaris straightened, preparing himself for first contact with Earth's warriors. The door opened, and Veltaris got his first look at humanity. The first human through the airlock was tall by Quellan standards, though not unusually so. He wore armor that looked practical but primitive compared to Coalition standard gear. His face was exposed, showing smooth skin the color of light brown earth. 2 eyes, forward-facing like a predator. No visible weapons on his head. No natural defenses at all. He looked harmless. That was Veltaris's first thought. This creature looked absolutely harmless. Commander Veltaris, the human said. His voice was calm, steady. He raised one hand in what might have been a greeting. I'm Captain Day 1, Earth Defense Force. Thank you for having us. Veltaris tried not to stare. The translator worked perfectly, but something about the human's tone was strange. Too calm. They were in the middle of a war zone, and this creature sounded like he was arriving for a diplomatic visit. Captain, Veltaris managed. Welcome to Velthar Prime, though I wish the circumstances were better. We've seen worse circumstances. Daywan smiled. Veltaris had studied the gesture in the limited files. It was supposed to be friendly. On that predator face, it looked like something else entirely. More humans filed out of the airlock. 40 in total, just as promised. They moved with efficiency, carrying equipment and weapons. Veltaris noted that their weapons were kinetic, not energy-based. Primitive technology. Projectiles, instead of plasma. This was going to be a disaster. One of the humans approached, smaller than Day One but carrying medical equipment. "Lieutenant Hana, sir," she said to Veltaris. "Combat medic and xenobiologist. If you could direct me to your medical facilities, I'd like to assess the wounded." "Of course," Veltaris said. He gestured to Pelnoth, who led Hana away. Another human, broader and heavier than the others, was setting up some kind of large weapon in the corner of the docking bay. "Sergeant Tai Yang," Day One said, following Veltaris's gaze. "Heavy weapons specialist. He likes to be prepared." "Prepared for what?" Veltaris asked. "Anything." Day One's smile widened slightly. Veltaris led them to the command center. Along the way, he watched the humans with growing confusion. They leaked water from their skin. Their breathing was loud. They flinched at the loud noises of the damaged station, showing clear fear responses. Yet they kept moving forward anyway. In the command center, Hixral had pulled up Earth's full preliminary file on the main display. Day One studied it while pulling something from a pouch on his belt. A round red object. He bit into it with a loud crunch. Juice ran down his chin. "That's a fruit from our world," Day One explained, noticing everyone staring. "An apple. Want one? You're eating?" Pelnoth had returned and looked horrified. "During a briefing? Low blood sugar," Day One said cheerfully. "Makes me grumpy. Can't fight well when grumpy." Veltaris exchanged glances with Hixral. These were the reinforcements. These strange, water-leaking, fruit-eating creatures. "Captain, I need to be direct," Veltaris said. "We're facing impossible odds. Over 1,000,000 Krithian warriors surround this station. My forces are exhausted. I appreciate Earth's offer of assistance, but 40 soldiers cannot change the tactical situation significantly." Day One finished his apple and somehow made it disappear. "Commander, how long have you been fighting?" 3 weeks of continuous assault. "And how long can your people fight without rest?" Veltaris paused. "Quellan physiology requires 8 hours of rest per 20-hour cycle. More when injured or stressed. Humans can fight for 3 to 4 days without sleep if necessary," Day One said casually. "We won't perform at peak efficiency, but we'll function. Our bodies produce chemicals that override fatigue temporarily." That seemed impossible. Veltaris looked at Hixral, who was already searching the database. "It's true, sir," the crystalline officer said quietly. "Their adrenal system. It's aggressive." One of the younger humans, barely more than a juvenile by the look of him, approached nervously. "Captain? Permission to speak?" "Go ahead, G1. Sir. When do we deploy?" "I mean, respectfully, we came here to help." The young private looked at Veltaris. "We're ready to fight." He was scared. Veltaris could see it in his body language, in the slight shake of his hands. But he was volunteering anyway. "What kind of species sent their young into combat? Tell me about your combat experience," Veltaris said to Day One. The human captain's expression changed, became harder. "Personal or species-wide?" "Both. Personally, I've been in combat for 12 years. 3 major conflicts, dozens of smaller engagements. I've lost count of the firefights." Day One paused. "As a species, humans have been at war with each other for our entire recorded history. Over 10,000 years of nearly continuous conflict somewhere on our planet." The command center went silent. "You fight your own kind?" Pelnoth whispered. "For 10,000 years? We've gotten better about it recently," Day One said. "The last major global conflict ended about 80 years ago. Since then, we've mostly worked on unifying, but yes, we know war. It's in our blood, our history, our instincts." Veltaris felt something shift in his understanding. These weren't just Deathworld survivors. These were Deathworld predators, who'd spent millennia perfecting the art of killing their own species. Stars above, what had the Coalition unleashed? Show me your wounded. Hannah's voice came over the communication system. I'm in medical. Commander, you need to see this. They found Hannah in the medical bay, bent over a Quellan soldier with severe acid burns from Crithian bioweapons. She worked quickly, applying something from her kit to the wounds. This is going to hurt, she told the soldier gently. But it will save your life. The soldier screamed as whatever she applied started working. Veltaris moved to intervene, but Day One caught his arm. Watch, the captain said quietly. The burns were healing. Not completely, but the flesh was closing. The acid neutralized. In minutes, what would have taken weeks of treatment showed visible improvement. How? Veltari demanded. Hannah looked up. Deathworld medicine. On Earth, everything is trying to kill you. Bacteria, viruses, toxins, venoms. We got very good at emergency treatment. This is basic first aid for us. That's basic? Pelnoth stared. Well, advanced basic aid, Hannah admitted. But yes, if I can't fix it in the field, it usually means the patient is already dead. Another human entered, a female with sharp eyes and quick movements. Captain, I finished the recon. This station is a maze, but I've mapped the critical points. Recommend we set up defensive positions at these locations. She handed Day-Wan a data pad. Good work, Bora. Day-Wan studied the pad. How are the existing defenses? Adequate but exhausted. They need relief badly. Alarms suddenly screamed. Hixral's voice came over speakers. Massive Crithian assault incoming. All available forces to breach points. This is not a drill. Crithian 40 Cider. Tenchastrine 64. Massive Crithian 40. Day-Wan looked at Veltaris. Commander, permission to deploy my people? Veltaris wanted to say no. These humans seemed insane, their methods brutal, their biology impossible. But he had no choice. Permission granted. Sectors 7 and 12 need immediate support. Understood. Day-Wan turned to his soldiers. You heard the man. Bora, take your team to 7. Taeyang, 12. G1, you're with me. Everyone else, you know your assignments. Let's show them what Earth sends to war. The humans moved with sudden, frightening efficiency. The scared young private transformed into a focused soldier. The medic grabbed weapons, along with her medical gear. Even the ones who'd been resting snapped to alertness instantly. Captain, Veltaris called as Day-Wan headed for the door. The Crithians don't take prisoners. They don't retreat. They will try to kill you. Day-Wan looked back. That predator smile returned. Commander, everything on Earth tried to kill us. The weather, the wildlife, the diseases, even the plants. We're still here. The Crithians are just another Tuesday. Then the humans were gone. Running toward the breach points, while the Coalition forces were still mobilizing. Veltaris returned to the command center and pulled up the security feeds from sectors 7 and 12. Record everything, he told Hixral. Coalition command won't believe this otherwise. Sir, what won't they believe? Veltaris watched as the first humans reached the Crithian breach points. Watched as they took positions with movements that spoke of endless practice. Watched as Sergeant Taeyang set up his massive weapon and checked his ammunition with calm hands. They won't believe that we found something more dangerous than a Deathworld, Veltaris said quietly. We found what a Deathworld creates when it fails to kill a species for millions of years. The Crithians poured through the breach, and the humans opened fire. The sound of human weapons was different from anything Veltaris had heard before. Not the clean hum of plasma rifles or the sharp crack of energy weapons. This was thunder. Continuous, rolling thunder that echoed through the station's corridors like a living thing. On the security feed from Sector 12, Sergeant Tae-yang sat behind his heavy weapon, fingers steady on the trigger. The weapon spat metal at impossible speeds, and Crithians fell like harvested grain. The barrel glowed red from heat. But Tae-yang didn't stop. Hundreds of enemies poured through the breach, and he held them alone. "That's impossible," HFY whispered. "One soldier cannot hold that position. The weapon will overheat. He'll run out of ammunition. The enemy will overwhelm him." But Tae-yang held. When his first weapon ran dry, he dropped it and pulled another from his back. When Crithians got close, he used a handheld weapon with brutal efficiency. When one managed to reach him, he used his armored fist. A Crithian blade caught him across the shoulder. Green blood sprayed. Human blood. Tae-yang grunted, shifted his position slightly, and kept firing. "He's injured," Pelnoth said. "Why doesn't he fall back?" "Because there's no one to replace him," Veltaris said, understanding something fundamental about these creatures. "He knows if that position falls, the Crithians reach the civilians in the shelter behind that corridor." In Sector 7, Bora and her team fought differently. They moved constantly, never staying in one place. They used the environment, ducking behind cover, firing in controlled bursts, communicating with hand signals and short words. A young human, the one called Hyun, was positioned far back with a long-barreled rifle. Veltaris watched as he aimed carefully, taking slow breaths. The weapon fired once. On the feed from deeper in the corridor, a Crithian officer's head exploded. "Distance to target?" Veltaris asked HFY. The crystalline officer checked. 800 meters. Low light conditions. Moving target. "Impossible shot," Veltaris said. Hyun fired again. Another Crithian fell. "Apparently not for humans," HFY replied. Bora moved forward with another human, a female named Minji who carried no gun at all. When a Crithian warrior charged her, Minji didn't retreat. She moved forward, faster than Veltaris thought possible, and her hands became weapons. She struck pressure points, broke joints, used the enemy's own momentum against it. The Crithian was larger, stronger, covered in natural armor. It didn't matter. Minji fought with a precision that spoke of years of training. And the Crithian fell. Then another came. And another. Minji kept fighting, hand to hand against creatures that could tear through metal. "What kind of training produces that?" Pelnoth breathed. "The kind you get on a world where everything wants to kill you," Veltaris said. Captain Day-1 fought in the main breach corridor with young G1 at his side. The private was scared. Veltaris could see it in the way he held his weapon, the way his eyes darted around. But when the Crithians came, G1 fought anyway. He froze once. A Crithian warrior charged straight at him, and G1 simply stopped moving. Day-1 shouted something. The words didn't translate, but the meaning was clear. G1 snapped out of it, raised his weapon, and fired. The Crithian fell. G1 kept firing, fear transforming into action. The young one overcame his fear response, HFY observed. "How?" "Choice," Veltaris said, beginning to understand. "Humans feel fear, like any species, but they choose to act anyway. That's not biology. That's will." The battle raged for 2 hours. Coalition forces fought alongside the humans now, inspired by their example. The Crithians pushed hard, sending wave after wave of warriors. A Crithian acid spitter caught a human in the chest. The acid ate through armor, burning flesh. The human screamed, but didn't fall. He shot the spitter, then another enemy, then finally collapsed. Lieutenant Hana was there within seconds, running through active combat with no regard for her own safety. She dragged the wounded soldier back, started treatment, while energy blasts and projectiles flew overhead. "She's insane," Pelnoth said. "She'll be killed," but Hana wasn't killed. She saved the soldier, stabilized 3 others, and was back in the fight within minutes, her hands bloody and her armor scorched. The humans sustained injuries that would kill most species. They kept fighting anyway. Their biology seemed designed for damage control, for surviving what should have been lethal wounds. A human took a blade through the leg. He fell, rolled, and kept shooting from the ground. Another was thrown against a wall hard enough to crack the metal. She stood up, shook her head, and charged back into combat. Taeyang's position was finally overwhelmed. 30 Krithians rushed him at once. Veltaris watched in horror as the sergeant disappeared under the mass of bodies. Then something exploded. Taeyang had detonated something. A grenade, perhaps. Krithian bodies flew. The sergeant emerged from the smoke, covered in green and red blood, one arm hanging useless, but still fighting. He had a knife in his good hand, and rage in his eyes. Stars above. Veltaris whispered. They don't stop. They just don't stop. Veltaris. Commander, Krithian suicide bomber approaching Sector 7, Hixral warned. It's heading for the power core. Veltaris pulled up the feed. A massive Krithian, bloated with explosives, was running down the corridor. If it reached the core, the station would fall. Coalition soldiers fired at it but couldn't penetrate its thick armor. It was going to make it. Then Hyun's rifle fired. Once. The shot took the suicide bomber in what passed for its head. The creature stumbled. Hyun fired again. And again. Each shot, perfectly placed. The bomber fell 10 meters from the core, dead before it could detonate. He saved the station, Pelnoth said in disbelief. The assault began to falter. Not because the Krithians ran out of warriors. They never ran out. But because holding positions against humans cost more than they'd calculated. Every meter was purchased in blood, and the humans made the price unbearably high. Captain Daewon took a hit to his side. Veltaris saw the impact, saw the blood. The captain staggered, grabbed the wall for support. He's done, Hixral said. That wound is serious. Daewon straightened. He pressed a hand against the wound, said something to Jiwon, and kept fighting. He moved slower, more carefully, but he didn't stop. Lieutenant Hana found him minutes later. Captain, you're hit. I noticed, Daewon said, shooting a Krithian that got too close. Can you fix it? Not here. You need proper medical attention. After. Right now, I need to stay with my people. Hana said something sharp in their native language. Daewon responded in kind. They argued while fighting, medic and captain, and somehow still managed to kill everything that approached. Finally, Hana pulled out a device and jabbed it against Daewon's neck. He gasped, and his eyes went wide. That'll keep you going for 2 hours, she said. After that, you collapse whether you like it or not. Use the time wisely. Daewon nodded. When he moved now, he moved faster. The pain was still there. Veltaris could see it in his face. But the human captain fought through it. What did she give him? Veltaris asked. Checking the medical database? Hixral said. It appears to be a synthetic version of their natural adrenaline, combined with combat stimulants and pain suppressors. Humans developed it for battlefield use. They created a drug that lets them ignore wounds and fight longer? Apparently so. The battle turned. Slowly? Impossibly. The humans and the inspired coalition forces pushed the Krithians back. Bodies littered the corridors, most of them enemies. The humans paid in blood for every meter, but they took those meters anyway. Finally, after 2 hours of continuous combat, the Krithians retreated. They pulled back through the breaches, leaving their dead behind. Silence fell across the station. Not peaceful silence. The silence of exhaustion and shock. Veltaris checked the casualty reports. Coalition forces had taken 12% casualties. Bad, but not as terrible as he'd feared. The human casualties made him pause. 65% wounded. Almost every single one had sustained some injury. But 0 deaths. Not a single human had died. He found Captain Day 1 in Sector 12, standing over Sergeant Tae Young. The heavy weapons specialist was being treated by Hana, who'd strapped his broken arm and was sealing a dozen wounds. "You fought well," Veltaris told them. Tae Young grinned through the pain. "Just another day, Commander. Just another day. Just another day. Another day," Veltaris repeated. "You do this regularly on Earth?" "Not usually against aliens," Day 1 said. His face was pale from blood loss, but he stood steady. "But fighting?" "Yeah. It's what humans do. We fight to survive, to protect, to win. It's in our nature." Veltaris looked at the corridor. At the hundreds of dead Crithians. At the handful of humans who'd held against impossible odds. "Commander," Hicksral's voice came over comms. "The Crithians are regrouping. They'll attack again soon." "How soon?" "Hours at most." Veltaris looked at Day 1. "Can your people fight again? After this?" The human captain smiled that predator smile. "Commander, on Earth we have a saying. We didn't come this far to only come this far. We'll be ready." Veltaris believed him. These humans, these Deathworld creatures, would fight until they won or until they died. There was no middle ground in their nature. "Hicksral," Veltaris said into his comm. "Pull up Earth's complete file. Everything. I want to know what we're really dealing with here." "Yes, sir." As the humans rested and reloaded, as Hana moved among them treating wounds that should have been fatal, Veltaris finally understood. The Coalition hadn't sent reinforcements. They'd sent something far more dangerous. They'd sent Deathworld myths made flesh. The command center was quiet, except for the hum of computers and the distant sounds of repairs. Veltaris sat before the main display, while Hicksral pulled up Earth's complete file. The one with all the warnings. The one the Coalition had marked with red flags and caution symbols. "Sir, are you certain you want to see this?" Hicksral asked. "Some of the information is disturbing. The needed sings some of. The needed sings one. The needed sem of one. The needed sings one. Show me everything," Veltaris said. "I need to understand what we're dealing with." The first image appeared. Earth, from space. Blue and white and green. Beautiful like a jewel hanging in darkness. It looked peaceful. Safe even. "Appearances are deceiving," Hicksral said softly, and brought up the planetary data. Veltaris read, in growing horror. Gravity. 1.2 standard. 20% higher than Coalition norm. Humans lived their entire lives carrying extra weight that would exhaust most species. Atmospheric composition. 21% oxygen. Toxic levels for the majority of known species. What humans breathed casually would poison Quellans within hours. Temperature range. -89 to +58 degrees standard. Extremes that would kill most life. And humans lived in both environments. Weather. The file listed something called hurricanes. Storms with winds over 300 kilometers per hour. Tornadoes that could destroy entire settlements. Blizzards that buried cities. Tectonic activity. The planet's crust was broken into pieces that ground against each other constantly, creating earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Humans built cities on top of fault lines because they simply had nowhere else to go. "This planet is trying to kill everything on it," Pelnoth said, reading over his shoulder. "Keep going," Veltaris told Hicksral. The wildlife file opened. Veltaris saw creatures that made the Crithians look peaceful. Predators with teeth as long as his arm. Pack hunters that could run prey to exhaustion over days. Solitary killers that could take down prey 10 times their size. Ocean dwellers large enough to swallow a ship. Microscopic life. Billions of bacteria, viruses, parasites, all invisible and deadly. Humans existed in a constant war with things too small to see. Plant life. Even the plants were hostile. Thorns, poisons, toxins, trees that could grow through concrete, vines that strangled other life. How does anything survive there? Pelnoth whispered. By being tougher than everything trying to kill it, Veltaris said. He was beginning to understand. The human biology file was next. Hixral pulled it up, and Veltaris learned the truth about what these creatures were. Redundant organs. 2 kidneys when they only needed 1. 2 lungs. Multiple lobes in their processing organ they called a liver. If one part failed, another could compensate. Healing factor. Cuts sealed in days. Broken bones mended in weeks. Even destroyed liver tissue could regenerate. Their bodies were designed for damage control. Pain tolerance. Humans had pain receptors throughout their bodies, but their brains could override the signals. They could function through injuries that would incapacitate other species. Endurance. They could run for hours, fight for days, survive without food for weeks, without water for days. Their bodies burned fat reserves, cannibalized their own muscle if necessary. Anything to keep going. Temperature regulation. They sweated to cool down, shivered to warm up, and could survive in conditions that would kill most species within minutes. Adrenaline. Their bodies produced a combat drug naturally. When threatened, humans became faster, stronger, less sensitive to pain. They could temporarily override their own limits. They're designed for war, Hixral said quietly. Everything about their biology is optimized for survival in hostile conditions. A voice interrupted. Not designed exactly. Evolved. They turned to find Lieutenant Hana entering the command center. She looked tired, covered in dried blood, but her eyes were alert. Evolution isn't design, she continued. It's survival. Everything weak died. Everything strong had children. For millions of years, Earth killed the weak and kept the strong. What you're seeing is what's left after that process. You understand your own biology well. Veltaris observed. I'm a xenobiologist. I study alien life. But you can't understand other species without understanding your own, first. Hana approached the display. May I? Veltaris gestured permission. Hana pulled up a new file. Human history, she said. This is what you really need to understand. Images appeared. Ancient humans, barely different from animals, fighting predators with stone tools. Cities built and destroyed by earthquakes. Empires rising and falling. Wars that consumed entire continents. We've been at war for 10,000 years, Hana said. Not continuously, but somewhere on Earth, humans were always fighting. Over resources, territory, beliefs. Sometimes, just because we could. We got very, very good at killing. More images. Weapons progressing from stones to swords to guns to bombs that could destroy cities. We nearly wiped ourselves out, Hana admitted. Several times. Disease, war, environmental collapse. There were periods when our population dropped to thousands. We should have gone extinct. But you didn't, Veltaris said. No. Because humans have one trait that matters more than strength or speed or any physical advantage. Hana met his eyes. We're stubborn. We refuse to quit. Earth tried to kill us with ice ages. We survived. Plagues killed millions. The species survived. We fought wars that should have destroyed us. We survived those too. A young human entered, the communications specialist called Subin. Captain wants you back in medical, Lieutenant. Some of the wounded need checking. In a minute. Hana pulled up another file. This is what happens when you take a species like ours and give us time to think instead of just survive. The file showed human achievements. Art, music, literature, science, and medicine. Spaceflight. The coalition contact. We spent 10,000 years learning to kill, Hana said. Then we spent the last 100 learning to heal, to build, to explore. We're not just warriors, Commander. We're everything our world made us. Fighters and builders. Killers and healers. Captain Day 1 arrived with young G1. The captain moved stiffly. His wounds clearly still painful, despite treatment. You should be resting, Hana said sharply. I will. After I make sure everyone else is settled. Day 1 looked at the display. Giving them the full Earth tour, Lieutenant? They deserve to know what they're working with. Day 1 nodded. He addressed Veltaris directly. Commander, I know what the files say. I know how we must look to you. Violent, primitive, dangerous. You are dangerous, Veltaris said honestly. Yes, Day 1 agreed. We are. But we're dangerous to your enemies, not to you. Earth joined the coalition because we were tired of fighting ourselves. We'd rather fight for something bigger. Why? Pelnoth asked. Why join us? You could have stayed isolated. Safe on your world, G1 spoke up, surprising everyone. Because we're not safe anywhere. Earth taught us that. You can't hide from danger. You can only face it. The young private's voice grew stronger. And, if we have to face danger anyway, better to face it protecting others than fighting ourselves. Veltaris studied the young human. Hours ago, this one had frozen in fear. Now he spoke with conviction. You grow quickly, Veltaris observed. We have to, G1 said simply. Life doesn't wait for you to be ready. Subin pulled up a data file. Commander, you might want to see this. It's our service records. Veltaris read through them. Captain Day 1 had been in combat for 12 years, yes. But before that, he'd been a teacher. Hana was a doctor before she became a soldier. Taeyang had been an engineer. Bora had studied art. You're civilians, Veltaris said in shock. We're humans, Day 1 corrected. On Earth, there's not much difference. Every civilian knows how to fight if needed. Our history taught us that. You can't separate the warrior from the person. They're both part of who we are. The unit you sent, Veltaris said slowly, understanding dawning. You said they weren't special forces. They're not. We're standard infantry. Earth's best warriors are far more capable than us. Hixral made a sound like cracking ice. If you're standard, what are your best warriors like? Scarier, Day 1 said simply. Alarms started blaring. Hixral rushed to his station. Commander, long-range sensors detect the main Krithian fleet. They're coming. How many? Veltaris asked, though he dreaded the answer. 200 bioships. Estimated 2 million warriors. The room went silent. Coalition reinforcements? Pelnoth asked quietly. Still 3 days away, Hixral said. 2 million enemies. A few hundred defenders. Even with humans, the math was impossible. Day 1 didn't seem concerned. When will they arrive? 12 hours. Good, that gives us time. Day 1 turned to his soldiers. Subin, get everyone together. We need to prepare. Prepare what? Veltaris asked. Captain, even your people can't fight 2 million enemies. That predator smile returned. Not in direct combat, no. But Commander, humans didn't survive Earth by being the strongest. We survived by being the smartest. We're tool users, problem solvers, and I have a problem that needs solving. What do you need? Everything you have that's not a weapon but could be. Fertilizer, cleaning chemicals, industrial equipment, metal scrap. Oh, and your engineering team. I'm going to need help building some things. Building what? Day 1's smile turned dark. On Earth, we learned to use everything around us to survive. Our world tried to kill us, so we used the world itself as a weapon. Time to teach the Krithians what a Deathworld education really means. Veltaris looked at this human, wounded and tired but unbowed. He looked at the young private who'd overcome his fear. At the medic, who ran into fire to save others. At all of them, these impossible creatures from an impossible world. Do it, Veltaris said. Whatever you need, we're with you. Because he finally understood. The coalition hadn't sent warriors. They'd sent humans. And that was so much worse for the Krithians. The next 12 hours transformed Velthar Prime into something between a fortress and a trap. Veltaris watched the humans work with a mixture of fascination and horror. They moved through the station's storage areas like scavengers, taking everything that wasn't nailed down and some things that were. In the main cargo bay, a human engineer named Kang Dae stood before a table covered in chemicals and equipment. He worked with steady hands, mixing compounds that made Veltaris's threat sensors scream warnings. "This is fertilizer," Kang Dae explained, holding up a container. "For growing plants. Very safe normally. This is fuel oil. Also safe." He mixed them together in careful proportions. "You're making explosives from farming supplies," Pelnoth said, weakly. "Ammonium nitrate bombs. Very effective. Humans use them for mining on Earth, sometimes for warfare. The components are everywhere if you know what to look for." Kang Dae smiled. "Deathworld education. We learned to make weapons from anything." Corporal Bora worked in another section, assembling devices that looked disturbingly simple. Metal pipes filled with nails and scrap, containers of chemicals with crude fuses, fragmentation devices, she explained when Veltaris asked. "The explosion sends shrapnel everywhere. Very effective in enclosed spaces like corridors." "These are barbaric," Hixral said. "Yes," Bora agreed cheerfully. "But they work. On Earth, we learned that simple and effective beats complex and perfect. A rock thrown well can change history. These are just very advanced rocks." In the ventilation control room, Lieutenant Hana worked with cleaning supplies. She poured bleach into one container, ammonia into another, and carefully sealed them. "Don't mix these," she warned the Quellan technician helping her. "If they combine, they create chlorine gas. Deadly, in high concentrations." "You're making poison," the technician said, horrified. "Chemical warfare," Hana corrected. "Not pleasant, but effective. We can pump it through specific corridors and vent it before our people move in. It's what humans call a force multiplier." Throughout the station, humans set traps. They identified sections that could be sealed and vented to space. They rigged emergency bulkheads to drop on command. They placed their crude explosives at structural weak points. Captain Daewon coordinated everything from the command center, moving pieces on a tactical display like he was playing a complex game. "The Crithians will expect us to defend positions," he explained to Veltaris. "They'll expect us to hold ground and fight them directly. We're not going to do that." Then what will we do?" "We're going to make them pay for every meter they take. We'll fight from prepared positions, fall back to the next defensive line, and leave surprises behind. We'll use the station itself as a weapon." Veltaris studied the plan. It was brutal, ruthless, and completely contrary to standard coalition defensive doctrine. It was also brilliant. This is how humans fight, he realized. You don't match strength for strength. You use everything available. Exactly. On Earth, we learned that a smaller force with better tactics can defeat a larger force with none. We've been doing it for thousands of years. Young Ji-1 entered with a datapad. "Captain, all explosive devices are placed and connected to remote detonation. Sergeant Tae-young confirms all heavy weapons positions are ready. Lieutenant Hana has the chemical deployment system working." "Good." Daewon looked at Veltaris. "Commander, we should evacuate all non-essential personnel to the core section. Things are going to get messy." They moved everyone who couldn't fight to the station's most protected area. The remaining defenders, human and coalition alike, took their positions. Veltaris found himself in the command center with Hixral, watching sensor displays. The Crithian fleet was close now. Hours away. "Sir," Hixral said quietly, "the humans have been preparing to die. These tactics, these weapons, they're planning to make their deaths count for as much as possible." "I know." Veltaris had realized it hours ago. The humans expected to lose. They were just determined to take as many enemies with them as possible. Daewon appeared at his shoulder, as if summoned by thought. "We're not planning to die. Commander, your tactics suggest otherwise. Our tactics suggest we understand mathematics. We're outnumbered 5,000 to 1. Death is possible. But we're humans. Dying has never stopped us from trying to win." The Crithian fleet arrived like a swarm of locusts, blotting out the stars. 200 massive bioships surrounded the station. Smaller craft poured from them, like blood from a wound. "Here they come," HFY announced unnecessarily. The first wave hit. Thousands of Crithians. They breached the outer hull in 15 locations simultaneously. More points than the defenders could possibly cover, and Captain Daewon smiled. "Let them in," he said calmly. Springtrap 1. The Crithians poured into what looked like undefended corridors. They advanced quickly, meeting no resistance. Thousands of them packed into the outer sections, searching for prey. "Now," Daewon said. Kang Dae pressed a button. The explosions were enormous. Fertilizer bombs detonated in sequence, tearing through corridors packed with Crithians. Bulkheads collapsed. Sections vented to space. The outer ring of the station became a death trap. Thousands of Crithians died in seconds. Phase 1 complete, Daewon reported. Estimated 40,000 casualties. Veltaris stared at the displays. The humans had just killed 40,000 enemies without firing a shot. The Crithians adapted quickly. They advanced more carefully now, checking for traps. They found some. Others found them first. In Sector 9, Crithians triggered a fragmentation device. Shrapnel tore through them. In Sector 4, they breached a door that Hana had prepared, and chlorine gas flooded the corridor. In Sector 11, they walked into a chamber that Bora had rigged to collapse. The station became a maze of death, and the humans controlled every path. But there were 2 million Crithians. Even losing thousands didn't slow them significantly. They kept coming. Wave after wave. The humans fell back to prepared positions. Now they fought directly, using their primitive but effective weapons. Taeyang held another corridor, his heavy gun roaring. Bora threw grenades around corners. Minji fought hand-to-hand when enemies got close. Coalition forces fought alongside them now, inspired by human courage. A Quellan officer charged into combat, shouting a war cry. HFY left his station to take up a weapon. Fighting beside beings he'd thought soft and weak, the battle became a grinding meat grinder. The humans gave ground slowly, making the Crithians pay in blood for every meter. They were wounded, exhausted, running on adrenaline and stubbornness. A young human named Yon held a critical choke point alone when his squad had to fall back. He was scared. Veltaris could see it on the monitors. But he stayed. For 20 minutes. One terrified young human held back hundreds of enemies. Because lives depended on him. When his squad returned, Yon collapsed. But he'd held. Sergeant Taeyang's position was overrun again. This time, there was no dramatic escape. He went down under a pile of Crithians. His gun finally silent. "Taeyang is down," someone reported. Then, impossibly, movement. The sergeant stood up from the pile of bodies, bleeding from a dozen wounds, missing part of his armor. He picked up a Crithian weapon and kept fighting. "Why won't they die?" A Quellan soldier screamed in awe and terror. "Because we're human," G1 said simply, firing controlled bursts. "We don't know how to quit." The Crithian command ship approached the station, larger than all the others. It intended to ram the core, to destroy the station entirely. "We can't stop that," HFY said. "It's too large, too heavily armored." Daewon looked at the display. His uniform was torn, blood seeping through bandages. He'd been fighting for hours without rest. "We board it," he said. "That's suicide," Veltaris protested. "Probably. But if we don't, the station falls anyway." Day 1 turned to his soldiers. I need volunteers. Every human raised their hand, even the wounded ones. Day 1 selected 10, including Bora, Minji, and young G1. The rest of you, hold the line. We'll be back. They used a damaged docking tube as a bridge, crossing while energy weapons fired all around them. 3 Krithians guarded the entrance. Minji killed them before they could raise an alarm. Inside the bioship, the walls were organic, pulsing like living flesh. The air was thick and humid. It was disgusting and terrifying. The humans moved through it like they were taking a walk. This way, Day 1 said, following the layout Kang Day had mapped. The neural center should be at the core. They fought through corridors of flesh and chitin. Krithians appeared from side passages. The humans killed them with brutal efficiency. G1 was hit in the shoulder. He staggered, but Bora pulled him along. Keep moving, kid. We're almost there. They reached the neural center. A massive chamber filled with pulsing organic machinery. The ship's brain, if it could be called that, Kang Day said. If we overload the biological reactor, it should chain react through the fleet's network, Day 1 said. They're all linked. How do we overload it? Minji asked. Day 1 pulled out every explosive device he carried. The old-fashioned way. They set the charges while Krithians poured into the chamber. The humans formed a defensive circle, firing at everything that moved. Charges set, Bora announced. 30 seconds. They ran, through corridors, back toward the docking tube. Krithians chased them. Behind them, the timer counted down. They were halfway across the tube when the explosion hit. The bioship shuddered, then began to tear apart. The humans ran faster, diving through the airlock as the tube collapsed behind them. The command ship died. But more importantly, it took the fleet network with it. The linked biology that connected all Krithian ships turned against them. Bioships across the battle space began to fail. The enemy fleet, 200 strong, began to fall apart. Coalition reinforcements arrived to find the battle already won. They found a damaged station, exhausted defenders, and humans who'd somehow defeated an impossible enemy. Final casualties: 15 humans dead, 38 wounded, some critically. Estimated Krithian losses: 1.8 million. Fleet destroyed. In the medical bay, Veltaris found Captain Day 1 being treated for wounds that should have killed him. The human was arguing with Hana about staying in bed. The battle's over, Captain, Veltaris said. You can rest now. Day 1 looked at him with tired eyes. Is it over, Commander? Or is it just beginning? Veltaris understood the question. You mean for humanity, in the coalition? Yes. You've seen what we are now. What we're capable of. Does that change things? It does, Veltaris admitted. But not in the way you might think. He pulled up a report on his datapad. Coalition Command has reviewed my logs. They're recommending full military integration for Earth, not as auxiliaries, as equals. Because we're useful weapons, Day 1 said bitterly. Because you're survivors? Veltaris corrected. Because when everything should have killed you, you refused to die. The galaxy needs that. We've fought wars for territory, resources, ideals. The Krithians taught us that sometimes survival itself is a war, and humans are the best survivors we've ever found. Young G1 appeared, his arm in a sling but his eyes bright. Captain, more ships are arriving, human ships. They moved to the observation deck. Outside, human vessels appeared from jump points. Not dozens. Hundreds. Earth didn't send a contingent, Veltaris realized. They sent an expeditionary force. Yes, Day 1 said. We came to help. And we're not leaving until the job is done. Veltaris looked at the human fleet. At these Deathworld creatures who'd changed everything. A month ago, humanity was unknown. Now they'd proven themselves in the hardest way possible. Welcome to the Coalition, Captain Day One, Veltaris said formally. Welcome to the war. Day One smiled. That predator smile that Veltaris had learned meant determination, not threat. Commander, the human said, we've been at war our entire existence. This is just the first time we're fighting for something bigger than ourselves. The Crithians. The threats out there in the dark, they don't scare us. Earth was scarier. And we survived that. He was right, Veltaris knew. The galaxy had been fighting the Crithians for years, barely holding them back. Now humanity had arrived, bringing their Deathworld education, their refusal to quit, their terrible ingenuity. The balance of power had shifted. The age of humanity in the stars had truly begun.